The dust moon hung in the black sky like a quiet silver stone. Its surface was rough, full of deep craters and jagged rocks, but people had made homes here. Miners, engineers, and travelers worked hard under the faint light of the twin suns. Among them was a small settlement called Red Rock Outpost, where a simple wooden saloon had been built to give workers a place to rest. It looked old, but inside it smelled of roasted food, oil, and warm light. The saloon was the heart of Red Rock Outpost. Every evening, the tired workers came here to eat, drink, and forget the hard life outside. On this evening, the saloon was lively. The tables were full of miners wiping soot from their faces. The air smelled of hot stew, burnt bread, and strong herbal drinks. The walls were covered with tools, maps of nearby mining areas, and the marks of time. Some of the markings were carved initials, showing that humans had always tried to leave their mark even on far-off moons. A young woman named Mira entered the saloon. She was small in size, with sharp eyes and hands that always seemed busy. Her hair was tied back neatly and her clothes were simple but clean. Mira worked as an engineer in the deep core mines. She repaired machines that dug into the hard rock, fixing engines and keeping the mining equipment running. She was quiet and careful. Many people respected her skills, but few had the courage to approach her casually. Tonight, Mira came to the saloon not for food or drink but for a moment of calm. She had finished repairing a critical drill, and her body ached from long hours in the dark tunnels. She walked toward the bar and asked for some warm water. She hoped to sit by the corner window and watch the orange light of dust moon fall on the rocky plains. The saloon seemed calm until a group of rough-looking men entered. They were outlaws who had arrived from another mining camp. Their clothes were stained with dust and oil, and their boots left dark tracks on the wooden floor. They were drunk, laughing loudly, and holding small bottles of strong liquid. Their eyes scanned the saloon, and when they saw Mira, their laughter grew louder. "Look at this little engineer," one of them said. "She thinks she can survive here alone." The men started walking toward her. Their steps were heavy, and the floor creaked under their weight. Mira's heart beat faster, but she did not move. She had faced dangerous machinery, cave collapses, and malfunctioning engines, but she had never faced men like these. Most of the workers at the saloon stayed silent. They watched the scene unfold, unsure if they should intervene. The outlaws continued to mock Mira, laughing at her size and quiet manners. Mira's hands tightened around her small bag, but she remained calm. She knew anger could make the situation worse. Her mind raced to think of a way out, but she also knew that sometimes the best defense was courage. In a quiet corner of the saloon, a cowboy named Rian observed the scene. He was a traveler who had arrived at Red Rock Outpost only a few days ago. His clothes were simple, a worn brown jacket and dusty boots, and his hat shaded his sharp eyes. He did not carry a visible weapon, but something about him made people pay attention. Rian had traveled across many worlds, helping those in need, and he had learned the importance of staying calm in dangerous situations. Rian watched the outlaws closely. He noticed the way they moved together, how their confidence grew as they surrounded Mira. He also noticed Mira's quiet strengths. She did not cry, she did not beg, and she did not run. There was something about her spirit that reminded him of humans he had seen on other worlds. Humans could be small, weak in appearance, but their courage and intelligence made them strong. The outlaws laughed again. One of them reached toward Mira as if to push her. Mira shifted slightly but did not step back. The room held its breath. Other workers whispered quietly to each other, unsure if they should leave, fight, or wait. The tension grew thick, like the dust outside that made breathing heavy. Rian stood slowly. The wooden floor creaked under his boots, but his voice remained calm and firm. "Leave her alone," he said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. The saloon fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the cowboy. The outlaws stopped laughing for a moment, surprised. They looked at Rian and then at each other. "Who are you to tell us what to do?" one of them shouted. His voice was loud, but there was a hint of doubt. Rian did not move closer. He did not raise his voice. He only kept his calm stance and watched the men carefully. Mira glanced at Rian. She felt a small sense of relief. Someone had finally spoken. Someone who might protect her. She did not know him, but she could feel his confidence. It was different from the confidence of the outlaws. It was quiet and steady, like the calm before a storm. The outlaws laughed again, louder this time. They thought Rian was just another miner, not someone who could stop them. "Look at the cowboy," one said. "He thinks he can scare us." They stepped closer, trying to show dominance. The saloon workers watched nervously, unsure if they should help or hide. Rian's hand moved slightly toward the small device on his wrist. It was hidden under his jacket, almost invisible. It was not a weapon in the usual sense, but a piece of old human technology designed to protect innocent people. He had used it only a few times before, and each time it had reminded him why humans could survive in the hardest conditions. He knew that violence was not always the answer. Sometimes control, courage, and intelligence were stronger. Mira's eyes widened slightly as she noticed the faint glow from Rian's wrist device. She did not understand it fully, but she felt hope. She realized that sometimes humans could stand together without fighting, and that courage could come from unexpected places. The leader of the Outlaws stepped forward, ready to push Mira again. Rian moved slightly, and the device emitted a soft pulse of energy. The Outlaws stopped in their tracks. Their laughter faded, replaced by confusion. The energy was gentle but firm. It made the room feel heavier, and the men could not move forward. The saloon was completely silent now. Workers looked around in surprise. Myra took a small step back, unsure of what would happen next. Rian remained calm. His eyes were fixed on the Outlaws, and his body spoke a message that humans had learned long ago. Courage and intelligence could protect the weak. Rian spoke in a calm voice that carried through the saloon. This place is for everyone. No one hurts another person here. Understand that now. His words were simple, but they were powerful. The Outlaws felt the strengths behind them. They realized that they could not intimidate the cowboy or the young woman. The Outlaws looked at each other, then at Mira, and finally at Rian. Slowly, they stepped back. Their faces showed fear and respect. They had never expected someone to stand against them so quietly. Without anger, without shouting, but with absolute confidence. Mira's heart raced, but she felt a small smile. She could now see that humans were capable of strength even in the darkest places. She realized that courage was not about size or weapons, but about spirit and intelligence. Rian relaxed his stance, and the energy from the device faded. The Outlaws left the saloon quietly, still unsure of what had happened. The workers looked at Rian and Mira with admiration. They had witnessed something rare, humans standing together to protect what was right. Myra thanked Rian quietly. "I did not know what to do," she said. Rian only nodded and smiled. He understood. Sometimes humans needed each other more than anything else. As the saloon returned to its usual life, Mira sat by the window, watching the dust moon glow orange in the evening light. She felt a sense of hope. On this hard, far-off moon, humans could survive, protect each other, and even inspire courage. And tonight, she had seen it happen. Rian left the saloon quietly. No one followed him, but everyone knew he would be remembered. In the frontier worlds, stories of human courage traveled fast. People spoke not of weapons or strength, but of spirit. And in that quiet, simple saloon on Dust Moon, a young engineer and a calm cowboy had reminded everyone that humans were capable of greatness. The night on Dust Moon was quiet. Outside the Red Rock outpost, the winds swept over the craters, carrying dust that glowed softly under the twin moons. Inside the saloon, the warmth and light made a small bubble of safety against the harsh world outside. Mira sat at her usual corner table, her hands wrapped around a cup of hot water. She was still thinking about the events from earlier. The Outlaws had left, but the memory of their mocking voices made her uneasy. Rian sat at a nearby table, quietly observing the saloon. He had finished his drink, and his hat was tilted slightly over his eyes. He noticed Mira watching him, unsure whether to speak. He gave a small nod, telling her it was all right. Courage was not something that could be forced, he thought. It grew slowly, like a flame that needed care. Meanwhile, outside the settlement, the Outlaws regrouped near a pile of rocks. Their leader, a tall man with broad shoulders named Vaughn, clenched his fists. His face was red from both anger and the cold night. He whispered to his companions, "The cowboy is too strong, we could not even move near him. But we will not forget this. Tomorrow we take the saloon. We will teach them both a lesson." The other men nodded. They had not expected anyone to stand against them without fear. Their pride had been hurt. On Dust Moon, reputation meant everything. A group of outlaws could not lose face. They spent the night planning, unaware that Rian had already anticipated some of their actions. The cowboy had traveled across many worlds, and he had learned that danger often returned in waves. The next morning, Myra went to the mining tunnels as usual. The drills were humming and machines groaned as they dug deeper into the rock. Mira checked the equipment, making sure everything worked properly. She felt uneasy about the outlaws' threat, but she also knew that fear would not help. Humans survived difficult worlds by staying calm and preparing for what might come. Rian walked through the settlement, observing the workers and miners. He had learned the layout of Red Rock Outpost quickly. Every corner, every building, and every path mattered when preparing for defense. He also noticed the miners whispering about the previous night. The story of the cowboy standing against outlaws without violence spread fast. Humans were naturally curious and respected courage. By midday, the outlaws began to approach the settlement again. They moved quietly, trying not to attract attention. Vaughn's group had brought small energy weapons and ropes. Their plan was to frighten the people of the saloon and take revenge on Mira and Rian. Dust moons, soft dust made their footsteps, silent, but Rian had already seen faint tracks in the rocky paths outside the settlement. Rian returned to the saloon and met Mira. She looked worried, but her hands were steady. "They might come back," she said quietly. "I am not sure what to do." Rian nodded. "We prepare. Humans survive by thinking, not rushing. We stay calm and use what we have. We do not fight blindly." He walked to the back of the saloon and pulled out a small bag. Inside were several devices similar to the one he had used last night. Each device was designed to create a protective field or a gentle energy pulse. They could stop aggressive movements without causing harm. Myra's eyes widened. "You brought more?" she asked. "I did not know you could have so many." Rian smiled slightly. "Humans prepare. Tools, knowledge, and courage are stronger than brute force. Tonight, we might need all three." As night fell, the saloon was quiet. Workers had returned home, leaving only Myra, Rian, and a few travelers. The lights inside glowed warmly, casting shadows on the walls. Rian placed the devices at strategic points near the entrances. He showed Mira how they worked, explaining that they would create a gentle barrier if someone tried to force their way inside. Mira listened carefully, understanding that even small humans could defend themselves when smart. Outside, the outlaws approached cautiously. They had no knowledge of Rian's devices or how humans could stand together with intelligence. Vaughn signaled his group to move forward. They wanted to surprise Myra and scare the settlement. But something in the air felt different. The dust seemed heavier, and a faint hum came from the saloon. When the outlaws reached the saloon doors, they found them closed and quiet. They tried to push the doors open. As soon as they did, a gentle energy wave from Rian's devices activated. It was not harmful, but it created a soft force that made the outlaws stumble. They looked around, confused, unable to understand how a few humans could block them, so icily Rian stepped forward calmly. His presence was steady, like a mountain against the wind. "Leave now," he said. "You cannot harm anyone here. I do not want to fight, but I will protect this place." The outlaws laughed at first, thinking it was a bluff. Vaughn stepped forward and tried to push through. Instantly, the energy wave stopped him. He fell back, surprised and frustrated. The other outlaws tried as well, but all were blocked. Mira watched in awe. She realized that humans could create strength not only with weapons but also with intelligence, technology, and courage. Rian continued speaking. "Humans survive because we protect each other. We do not harm for pride, but we do not allow harm either. You can leave now, or you can learn the hard way that courage matters more than violence." The outlaws looked at each other. Their confidence was fading. They had expected fear from the settlers, but instead, they saw calm strength. Vaughn's anger burned, but he also knew humans had defended themselves before. On many worlds, settlers survived against threats much stronger than them. The outlaws were not used to being stopped by someone so quiet and firm. Myra took a deep breath and stepped closer to Rian. "I want to help," she said. "I can check the devices and make sure they do not fail." Rian nodded. "Good humans survive together. We use our minds, our hands, and our courage. Tonight, we stand as one." The outlaws realized that the situation was not in their favor. They tried to push again, but the devices activated faster, creating a gentle but firm barrier. Their weapons could not reach anyone. Their shouts and movements became weaker, showing that fear and respect were replacing anger. After some time, Vaughn finally stepped back. "We cannot win here," he muttered. "These humans are too strong, too smart, and too calm. Let us leave before we are humiliated further." One by one, the outlaws retreated into the darkness outside Dust Moon. Mira and Rian watched them leave. The settlement was safe. The saloon was quiet once again, but this time it was filled with a new feeling: respect. Humans had stood together and defended what was right. Myra smiled at Rian. "I understand now. Courage is not about fighting. It is about standing for what is right, even when you are afraid." Rian nodded. "Exactly. Humans survive because we think, we prepare, and we protect each other. That is our strength. Not size, not weapons, but spirit and intelligence." The saloon workers began to return, curious about what had happened. They listened to Mira and Rian's story. The tale of courage spread quickly. Humans respected intelligence.com strength and unity. On Dust Moon, even in the darkest and most dangerous places, people could survive when they worked together and had courage. That night, Mira stayed by the window again. The orange glow of the moons reflected on the rocky plains. She felt a new sense of confidence. Humans could face challenges, defend themselves without unnecessary violence, and stand tall even against threats that seemed stronger. Rian packed his small bag quietly. He knew that his job was not finished. Across the frontier worlds, humans always needed protection, guidance, and courage. He looked at Mira and nodded. "Tomorrow we prepare for new challenges. Humans never stop learning and growing. That is what makes us strong." Myra smiled. "I will be ready." Outside, the wind carried the soft dust across the craters. The outlaws had left, but the story of the cowboy and the young engineer would remain. On Dust Moon, humans could survive, protect each other, and inspire courage in even the smallest hearts. The night ended quietly, but it was full of promise. Mira, Rian, and the settlement had learned that intelligence, courage, and unity could protect them against any threat, and the frontier world waited, knowing that humans could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The morning sun rose over Dust Moon, painting the rocky plains in soft orange and gold. The wind was calmer than the previous night, carrying only light dust across the craters. Myra walked through the small settlement, checking the mining equipment and making notes for repairs. Her mind, however, kept returning to the outlaws. They had been stopped, but she knew they would not give up easily. On Dust Moon, nothing could be taken for granted. Rian watched Myra from a distance. He had moved quietly through the settlement, observing the people and the terrain. His eyes caught small details others would miss: the direction of the wind, the way shadows shifted over rocks, and the faint tracks left by the outlaws from the night before. He had learned long ago that threats often returned when humans least expected them. Preparation and observation were as important as courage. By midday, the outlaws were indeed moving again. Vaughn, the tall and angry leader, had gathered his group in a hidden canyon several kilometers from the settlement. Their faces were set with determination. They had not forgotten the humiliation from the previous night. Vaughn spoke in a low voice, careful not to be overheard. "The cowboy has slowed us, but he cannot stop us forever. Tonight, we strike harder. We will take the settlement, the saloon, and the engineer who embarrassed us. Dust Moon will remember our strength." The other outlaws nodded. They had spent the day gathering supplies, energy weapons, and climbing gear. They did not plan to harm anyone unnecessarily, but they wanted to intimidate. Pride drove them, and they could not let a few humans show them up twice. Back at the settlement, Mira and Rian prepared. Mira checked the devices Rian had placed in the saloon the night before. They were all working perfectly, ready to activate at a moment's notice. Rian moved quietly through the settlement, speaking with workers and miners. "Stay calm," he said. "Tonight, humans may face danger, but we can survive it together. Keep lights on, stay inside, and trust your courage." Mira looked at Rian with admiration. She had never met someone so calm and confident. He did not shout or force others to follow. Instead, he guided them gently, teaching them that intelligence and courage were stronger than fear. Myra realized that humans survived not only through strength but through careful thought and preparation. As the sun set and the twin moons rose, the settlement settled into an uneasy calm. Shadows stretched across the rocky plains, and the wind whispered through the craters. Myra sat by the window of the saloon, her hands wrapped around a cup of hot water. She could see faint movements in the distance, figures moving carefully through the rocks. Her heart raced, but she did not panic. Rian stood near the saloon doors, observing the horizon. His small devices were ready, and his eyes scanned the distant canyon. He had expected the outlaws to return, and he was prepared. Humans could survive any challenge when they used intelligence, courage, and teamwork. He signaled Mira quietly. "They are coming. Remember what we practiced. Stay calm, use the devices, and protect each other." The outlaws reached the edge of the settlement. Vaughn led them with careful steps. They had brought more equipment this time, and their confidence was higher. They believed that strength in numbers would overwhelm the humans, but they did not understand the quiet strength of humans who worked. Together, Rian activated a small device on the roof of the saloon. A soft hum filled the air. The energy field created by the devices was invisible but firm. When the outlaws tried to move forward, they stumbled slightly. Confusion crossed their faces. They had not expected technology or strategy to stop them. So was Eiley. Mira moved to her station near the main device, monitoring its output. She adjusted settings carefully, ensuring the energy field covered all entrances. Her hands worked quickly and confidently. She realized that humans could face threats even in the hardest places when intelligence guided their actions. Vaughn stepped forward, attempting to push through the field. The energy pushed him back gently but firmly. His face twisted with frustration. "This is impossible," he muttered. "We will not fail. Try again." The outlaws moved together, but Rian had already anticipated their approach. He activated secondary devices, creating small barriers and directing the energy waves. The outlaws were blocked at every step. They shouted and waved their weapons, but nothing reached the settlement. Their pride was being tested, and confusion replaced anger. Rian's voice carried clearly. "Leave now. You cannot harm anyone here. Humans survive because we protect each other. Strength comes from courage and intelligence, not from fear or violence." Myra added her voice, steady and firm. "You cannot intimidate us. We are ready, and we will stand together. Leave before this ends badly." The outlaws froze, unsure of what to do. They had never faced humans who could stop them without harming them. Their weapons were useless against the invisible barriers. They had underestimated the combination of preparation, courage, and calm thinking. Vaughn signaled for a retreat, but one of the younger outlaws stepped forward. Thinking he could break the barrier with brute force, he charged, but the device activated instantly, stopping him. He stumbled back, surprised and humiliated. The other outlaws realized that their plan was failing. They had thought numbers would win, but humans had used intelligence and courage to create strength greater than any weapon. Rian moved closer to Mira. "We are not finished yet," he said quietly. "Humans must always be ready. Tonight we have shown them our strength, but we must prepare for what comes next." Mira nodded. "I understand. Humans survive by thinking ahead, by staying calm, and by protecting each other. That is our real power." The outlaws finally retreated into the darkness of Dust Moon. Their plan had failed. Pride had been challenged, and they knew that humans could not be defeated. The settlement was safe, but the lesson was clear. Humans could use courage, intelligence, and preparation to survive even the toughest threats. Inside the saloon, Mira and Rianne gathered the workers. They explained how the devices worked and why staying calm was important. Humans could face fear, but intelligence and teamwork made them stronger than brute force alone. Everyone listened carefully, understanding that courage was not loud or violent. It was quiet, steady, and prepared. By midnight, the settlement returned to a sense of normalcy. Myra sat by the window, looking at the glowing plains of Dust Moon. She thought about the outlaws and how humans had faced them together. Humans were not the strongest by size or weapons, but by spirit, intelligence, and courage. Rianne checked the devices one last time. "We must always be ready," he said. "Dust Moon may seem quiet, but danger can return. Humans survive because we protect each other, plan carefully, and remain calm in the face of fear." Myra smiled. "I understand now. Humans are stronger than they seem. Courage and intelligence can protect us anywhere." The twin moons reflected on the rocky surface outside. The wind carried soft dust across the craters. The outlaws were gone, but the story of the settlement's courage would spread. Humans had shown that even against stronger opponents, careful planning, courage, and unity could protect them. Rianne and Mira stayed awake, watching the horizon. The frontier worlds were full of dangers, but they knew humans could face them together. They had learned that true strength was not about anger or pride, but about standing for what was right, protecting each other, and remaining calm under pressure. On Dust Moon, the night was quiet, but it was filled with promise. Humans had survived again, not through violence, but through courage, intelligence, and teamwork. And they knew that no matter what came next, they could face it together. The first light of dawn spread over Dust Moon, casting soft gold and orange across the rocky plains. The settlement of Red Rock Outpost was quiet but alive. Workers moved about with calm confidence, repairing machines, checking supplies, and preparing for the day ahead. Mira walked through the settlement, her steps steady and sure. She had learned something important in the last few days. Humans could face any challenge when they worked together, stayed calm, and used intelligence. Rianne walked beside her, quietly observing the settlement. His sharp eyes caught every detail of the workers' focused movements, the miners helping each other, and the travelers learning from their example. The twin moons had disappeared below the horizon, but their light had left a gentle glow on the rocks. It was a new day, and humans had survived the threats that came during the night. The outlaws had retreated far into the plains, but their threat still lingered in thought. Vaughn and his group had realized that humans could not be intimidated by numbers, weapons, or pride. The settlement had defended itself through courage, intelligence, and unity. The lesson had been learned. Humans were stronger than they appeared. Mira stopped at the saloon, where the energy devices were carefully maintained. She checked each one, ensuring they were ready for any unexpected events. Even though the outlaws had fled, humans must always be prepared. Dust Moon was a harsh world, and challenges could appear without warning. Myra understood now that strength came not from fear or force, but from careful preparation and calm courage. Rianne approached her. "You have done well," he said. "Humans survive because we protect each other, think ahead, and remain calm in the face of danger. Today is a new day, but we must remember what we have learned." Mira smiled. "I understand. Humans are strong not because of weapons or size, but because we act together, help each other, and remain calm." The workers in the settlement gathered around the saloon, curious about the morning. They had heard of the events from the night before and were eager to understand what had happened. Rianne spoke to them calmly. "Courage is not always loud. Strength is not always in numbers. Humans survive because we work together, think carefully, and protect one another. Remember this, and you will face any challenge successfully." The workers nodded, understanding the lesson. They began to share the story of the outlaws' retreat and the calm courage of the settlement. Dust Moon was harsh, but humans had proven they could survive even the most difficult challenges when they acted with intelligence and unity. Myra moved among the workers, offering guidance and encouragement. She helped them maintain their tools, repair equipment, and prepare for the day ahead. Her quiet confidence inspired others. Humans had learned that courage could be calm, intelligent, and steady, not loud or reckless. Rianne walked to the edge of the settlement, looking over the rocky plains. He could see faint dust trails far in the distance where the outlaws had fled. They would think twice before returning. The humans of Red Rock Outpost had shown that threats could be met with courage, preparation, and unity. Their strength was not in violence but in intelligence and determination. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the craters and cliffs. The workers began their day with energy and focus. Machines hummed in the mines, and travelers prepared to leave for nearby settlements. Myra and Rianne moved among them, quietly guiding and observing. Every step, every action, reminded the settlers that humans survived through teamwork, courage, and careful thought. By midday, the settlement had returned to a sense of normal life. Children played near the edges of the town, miners repaired machines, and travelers shared stories of other worlds. Mira sat by the window of the saloon, watching the plains glow under the sun. Dust Moon was harsh, but it was also full of opportunity. Humans could live here, thrive, and face challenges without fear. Rian joined her, leaning against the window frame. "This is what humans do," he said quietly. "We survive because we work together, we remain calm, and we use our minds. Even in the harshest places, humans can stand tall and face any challenge." Mira nodded. "I will remember this. Humans are strong because of courage, intelligence, and unity. That is our true power." Outside the settlement, the outlaws continued their journey across Dust Moon. They had learned an important lesson. Humans could not be intimidated by threats or pride. Strength came from careful preparation, courage, and working together. Vaughn and his group would think twice before returning to Red Rock Outpost. Humans had stood firm, and that had been enough to change everything. The settlement's workers gathered again in the saloon, sharing their experiences and lessons. Myra and Rian spoke to them calmly, reinforcing the importance of courage and intelligence. Humans had faced fear and threats, but they had done so without losing calm or confidence. Every worker and traveler understood that the frontier worlds could be survived through unity, preparation, and courage. As the sun began to set, painting the rocky plains in gold and orange, Mira and Rian walked to the highest hill in the settlement. They looked out over Dust Moon, seeing the small buildings, the glowing machines, and the wide, open plains. Humans had survived yet again. They had proven that courage was not in fighting but in standing firm, thinking clearly, and protecting each other. Rian spoke quietly, almost to himself. "Humans have always survived in the hardest places. We face fear, danger, and threats, but we act with courage and intelligence. That is how we grow stronger every day." Myra looked at him and smiled. "We are ready for anything. Humans can face challenges anywhere, even in the farthest corners of the frontier. Courage, intelligence, and unity will always guide us." The twin moons began to rise again, casting a silver light over the settlement. The dust carried softly across the craters, but it no longer felt threatening. Humans had learned how to face it, how to stand tall, and how to protect one another. Dust Moon, harsh and quiet, had become a place where humans could survive and thrive. Rian and Myra returned to the saloon. Workers, miners, and travelers gathered to share the evening meal. Laughter and quiet conversation filled the room. The settlement was safe, and humans had proven their strength without anger or unnecessary violence. Courage, intelligence, and unity had triumphed over fear. As night fell, Myra looked out the window one last time. The rocky plains glowed under the twin moons, and the wind carried dust gently across the craters. She felt a sense of pride and hope. Humans had survived, learned, and grown stronger. Even in the hardest worlds, they could face any challenge and protect each other. Rian stood beside her quietly. "This is what humans do," he said. "We act with courage, we think carefully, and we work together. That is why we survive. That is why we thrive." Mira nodded. "I understand. Humans are strongest not because of weapons or size, but because of spirit, intelligence, and courage. That is our power." The night was calm, the settlement safe, and Dust Moon peaceful. The outlaws had retreated, never to return. Humans had stood together, proving that courage, intelligence, and unity were stronger than any threat. The frontier world was ready for a new dawn, and humans were ready to face it. In the quiet of the night, the settlement slept, knowing that they had learned an important lesson. Courage did not need to be loud. Strength did not come from pride or fear. Humans survived and thrived through intelligence, teamwork, and protecting one another. Dust Moon was harsh, but humans were stronger. They had proven it, and with every sunrise, they would continue to grow stronger, braver, and wiser. Mira, Rian, and the people of Red Rock Outpost had shown that even the smallest humans could achieve greatness when they stood together. The first light of the next day glowed over the craters. Machines hummed in the mines, workers moved with purpose, and the settlement thrived. Humans had faced danger, stood tall, and learned that courage, intelligence, and unity were the true source of strength. The frontier world was bright with hope, and humans were ready for whatever challenges awaited them. The sun had barely risen over Dust Moon when the settlement of Red Rock Outpost prepared for a day that felt different. The rocky plains stretched far into the horizon, and the soft wind carried dust across craters and cliffs. Mira walked through the settlement, checking the machines and observing the workers. Even though the outlaws had retreated the previous night, she knew they were planning something more. The fear that had once existed had been replaced by determination. Humans had learned something important. Courage was not loud. It was steady and unyielding. Rian moved among the settlers quietly. He spoke with miners and travelers, teaching them how to remain calm and alert. "Today may be challenging," he said. "We have prepared for it. Remember what we learned. Intelligence, courage, and teamwork are our greatest strengths. We do not fear what comes at us. We face it together." Myra stopped at the saloon and checked the protective devices. Each one had been carefully maintained and calibrated overnight. The soft hum of their energy was barely noticeable, but it gave confidence to the humans inside. They were ready. Humans did not need to shout or display weapons to be strong. They simply needed to be prepared and work together. By midday, the outlaws began their approach once again. Vaughn led them through the dusty plains with careful steps. This time, their numbers were larger, and they had brought climbing gear, ropes, and energy weapons. They believed that strength in numbers would allow them to overwhelm the settlement. Pride had blinded them to the power of unity and intelligence that humans had shown. Rian watched them from a small hill near the settlement. He observed their movements carefully and signaled Myra. "They are coming. Stay calm and stay with the workers. Follow the plan. Humans protect each other first and think second. That is what makes us strong." Myra gathered the workers inside the saloon. "Stay near the walls," she said. "Keep your hands free. We will use the devices if anyone tries to enter. Watch carefully and listen to instructions. Courage comes from calm action, not panic." The outlaws reached the settlement just as the twin moons began to rise, casting a silver light over the rocky terrain. They shouted and waved their weapons, thinking fear would make humans flee. Instead, they found the settlement quiet but firm. The energy devices activated instantly, creating soft barriers that blocked entry. The outlaws stumbled, confused and frustrated. Rian stepped forward calmly. His presence alone made the outlaws hesitate. He did not shout, he did not swing a weapon. He only stood steady, showing them that humans could face danger without fear. "You cannot harm anyone here," he said clearly. "We will not fight blindly, but we will protect each other. Leave now, or you will face your own defeat." Vaughn clenched his fists, anger burning on his face. "We cannot let this go," he shouted. "Take them by force." The outlaws charged forward, but the energy devices created barriers at every entrance. They were stopped gently but firmly, unable to advance. Some tried to climb over tables or push past walls, but the devices blocked their movements. Every attempt failed. They had expected fear, but they faced courage, intelligence, and preparation. Myra moved among the devices, adjusting their settings carefully. She monitored the barriers to ensure no gaps existed. The outlaws tried to rush, but each time, they were stopped. The settlement's humans worked together quietly, calmly, and steadily. No one panicked. No one gave up. Rian spoke again. "Humans are strongest when we act together. Strength is not measured by weapons or anger. Strength comes from courage, intelligence, and protecting one another. Understand that now." The outlaws froze, unsure of how to respond. Pride had driven them to attack, but they now realized that human courage and preparation could not be defeated by numbers alone. They shouted in frustration, but their movements were weaker, slower. Confusion replaced confidence. Mira stepped forward beside Rian. Her voice was calm but firm. "You cannot intimidate us. We have prepared, we have learned, and we will stand together. Leave now before this ends badly for you." One by one, the outlaws began to retreat. Their weapons hung loosely in their hands. They had expected humans to panic, to flee, but instead, they saw calm strength, clever planning, and teamwork. They could not break through barriers of courage and intelligence. Vaughn looked around at his group, frustration and disbelief on his face. "We cannot win here," he muttered. "We are outsmarted and stopped without even fighting. Leave now and never return." The outlaws moved back into the rocky plains. Their plan had failed again. Dust Moon would remember that humans could protect themselves without violence, using courage, intelligence, and teamwork. Inside the saloon, Mira and Rion helped the workers regain confidence. "You did well," Rion said. "Humans survive because we protect one another. We think carefully, and we face danger calmly. Remember this. This is our true strength." Myra smiled. "I understand now. Courage is not about anger or force. It is about standing firm, thinking clearly, and helping each other. That is what makes humans strong." The settlement settled into calm once again. The miners returned to their machines, and travelers continued their journeys. Dust Moon seemed quiet, but everyone knew that humans had shown something important. They could survive any challenge when they stood together. Rian walked through the settlement, observing quietly. He saw the workers repairing tools, helping each other and speaking with calm confidence. Humans could be small, but their courage, intelligence, and teamwork made them powerful. Strength did not come from violence alone. It came from preparation, action, and unity. Myra sat by the window of the saloon, looking at the glowing craters outside. She thought about the outlaws and their failed attempts. She felt a new sense of confidence. Humans were capable of greatness even in the hardest places. She realized that courage was not a shout or a weapon, but a steady heart and a clever mind. Rian checked the energy devices one last time. "We must always be ready," he said. "Dust Moon may seem quiet, but danger can return. Humans survive because we protect each other, plan ahead, and act calmly. That is how we face any challenge." Mira nodded. "I will remember, humans are strong not because of size, but because of spirit, intelligence, and courage." The twin moons reflected softly on the rocky plains outside. Dust carried across the craters, gentle and calm. The outlaws were gone, but the story of the settlement's courage would spread far across the frontier worlds. Humans had stood together and shown that strength comes from unity and intelligence. That night, Myra and Rion stayed awake, watching the horizon. They knew the frontier worlds were full of challenges, but they also knew humans could face them together. They had learned that courage, intelligence, and preparation could defeat any threat. On Dust Moon, the settlement slept under the silver light of the moons. Humans had stood strong and proven that unity and courage were greater than fear. The frontier world was safe for now, but humans were ready for whatever challenges would come next. They had learned the true meaning of strength. The night ended quietly, but it was filled with hope. Humans had survived again, not through anger or violence, but through calm, courage, intelligence, and teamwork. The settlement of Red Rock Outpost would remember this day. Mira and Rian had shown everyone that humans could stand tall, even against the strongest opponents.